for Chris, but I'm also here for Thor, especially today. If you like Joss Whedon, maybe this video's not for you, but also you should read about the things that Joss Whedon has done. Hi everybody, welcome back to the channel. I have a new setup. This is my new desk. Look at her, it's great, amazing. I have a Jane Austen corner because, hello, it's me, of course I do. As you can tell by me actually remembering to put the pillow behind me this time, today is another Christravaganza video. And yes, it is yet another one that I lost in the great hard drive debacle of 2020. So the first time I watched this with Angel and Brittany, who you know by now, and the second time that I watched this, I watched with Michaela and Sarah, which therefore makes it even more complicated. So the scores are kind of all over the place, but we're just gonna go with it. We're just gonna have fun today, mostly. I feel like a lot of you have been waiting very patiently for this day, and that is the day that we talk about The Avengers from 2012, unfortunately directed by Joss Whedon. I don't think I need to spend that much time in this video talking about why we don't like Joss Whedon in this house, but if you really need the education, I can leave some links in the description below because that man. So the thing about this movie that I have felt the last two times that I watched this movie is that it's a really big spectacle. And especially in 2012 when we didn't have more or less regular superhero movies, and especially not any ensemble superhero movies, The Avengers 2012 is an event. Always has been, probably always will be, regardless of its director. I was a high school senior when this movie came out, and actually our senior trip was to take a bus about 15 minutes away from our school to our downtown area to watch The Avengers in theaters. So needless to say, I think this movie especially is the reason that the MCU stands the way that it does. Generally, this movie is the one that kind of started the phenomena of the MCU, especially as a social event. I'm not wrong, and I will fight you about that. If you don't know what The Avengers 2012 is about, where have you been? I don't mean to be mean about that, but like, everybody has seen this movie by now. It's an ensemble superhero movie about the first 6 Avengers coming together to defeat one villain. The only 3, actually I guess technically 4 Avengers on the team that had movies before this were Hulk, Iron Man, Captain America, who of course is who we're here for, and Thor, who I'm always here for, but different story. We're gonna go right into our pros. So the first 3 are people. Coulson was a whole phenomenon on his own. I really wish that Maria Hill was in more movies, even though somebody left a comment recently that was like, Maria Hill is in Age of Ultron and like a bunch of other Marvel movies, and I'm like, okay, but like, she's a side character, and it's not enough for me. I like Maria Hill, you know what I mean? Selvig is, I love Eric Selvig, mostly because he's in the first Thor movie and also played by Stellan Skarsgård. Stellan Skarsgård is my favorite Skarsgård. He's the one that's in Mamma Mia. I wrote down this specific version of Hawkeye. This is really much closer to comic book Hawkeye than any other Hawkeye we get in the MCU after this. We don't get anything about Barney whatsoever in the entire MCU, which, why not? Then I know there's the whole issue of Clint in the comics being deaf and using hearing aids, and that's completely omitted from the MCU. And a little tangent off subject, Jeremy Renner was kind of a jerk about it, just saying that Clint is a regular guy and doesn't wear hearing aids and doesn't have hearing loss because he's a regular guy. Like, what? Does he think about these things before he says them? But my point here is just that, like, this is the Hawkeye that I particularly like the most. Not necessarily because Jeremy Renner plays him, because I don't particularly care for Jeremy Renner, but it's the closest we get to the version of Clint that means the most to me. Mark Ruffalo. Oh yeah, I guess this is the first one that Mark Ruffalo's in. And actually, Michaela and I talked a lot about how Joss Whedon has a very specific way of writing. We call it his WHEDOnisms, and there are a lot of things that become very muddled and confusing in his writing when he gets very heavy on those WHEDOnisms. And there are a few actors that are good with dealing with those and like portraying those in a more accessible manner. And we really thought that Mark Ruffalo as Bruce Banner is one of those actors who can digest what he's been given and make it more accessible for the audience.
I don't think we should be focusing on Loki. That guy's brain is a bag full of cats. You could smell crazy on him.
So, you know, thanks to Mark Ruffalo for that. This is kind of both a pro and a con, is that 20 minutes into the movie, we finally get to see the Dorito body again, and that's great. It's just the proportions, you know what I mean? It's right there. It's right there. It's a pro because it's great to see, and it's a con because it takes 20 minutes to get to it. 20 whole minutes before we get any Chris Evans in this movie. Do you see why it's a problem? Especially when we're judging it in the frame of Chris Evans movies. I put down Stark's clean energy initiative. You know, it's still really great that like this billionaire wants to make his own building self-sufficient and sustainable. There are no good billionaires, but at least Stark is trying to do something that won't hurt the earth.
Stark Tower is about to become a beacon of self-sustaining clean energy.
His first name is Agent is probably one of my favorite lines in the movie, especially from Tony.
Phil, come in.
Phil?
I can't stay.
His first name is Agent.
Yes. How do I get into this? For a really long time, I've been trying to write a script or just condense my thoughts on why I'm not a Loki stan, other than just like I like Thor instead. A lot of it has to do with the fact that for a good portion of the MCU, Loki is certainly framed in a genocidal, pseudo-fascist, pseudo-Nazi light, and I think that is especially true in the Avengers. I'm specifically thinking of the scene where he tells that crowd of people to kneel and he stands above them and talks about why freedom is subjugation and why they should just allow him to subjugate them. And then the old man stands up and defies Loki and tells him,
There are always men like you.
And again with the Nazi thing, when Steve comes in, he tells Loki,
You know, the last time I was in Germany and saw a man standing above everybody else, we ended up disagreeing.
yes, Steve never actually punched Adolf Hitler. He's making a very intentional reference to Nazis in the wake of Loki standing over a group of people kneeling to him. Hello, editing page here once more. I just want to say that what I said here originally was not true. I don't think I was considering the fact that Red Skull is a Nazi. What I should have said was that Steve is literally talking about Red Skull, who was a Nazi, the leader of the rogue Nazi science department. So he is absolutely comparing what Loki is doing in Germany to Nazis. There's no doubt in my mind about it. Even if he's not specifically talking about Adolf Hitler, I think the people around him in the audience there will think of Adolf Hitler before they think of Red Skull. Being Jewish, it's really hard for me to connect with a character who is constantly being compared to the Nazis. That's my point here. In a very predictable page manner, I wrote down Thor's entrance, because even though this is a whole series about Chris Evans, Thor is still the #1 boy. Also, that whole scene is just funny. It's just hilarious.
Scared of a little lightning? I'm not overly fond of what follows.
Listen well, brother.
I'm listening.
Shakespeare in the Park?
Doth mother know you weareth her drapes?
I guess I have like two kind of funny quotes, if you will.
Have care how you speak. Loki is beyond reason, but he is of Asgard, and he is my brother.
He killed 80 people in 2 days.
He's adopted.
Taika Waititi saw that moment and expanded it for an entire relationship. And then there's the flying monkeys thing, especially when Steve is like,
I understood that reference.
Steve's butt in the blue suit.
Walk, fashion, baby, work it, move that bitch crazy.
I mean, it's America's ass, so who are we kidding? I really don't have that many pros. I also don't have that many more cons than I have pros. I did write down throwing Loki around though. It warms my heart to see a character compared to a Nazi be thrown around that way. Those are really all of the pros that I have. I think generally I still like this movie. I am gonna go into my cons now though, because I don't know, maybe this video will be shorter than the other ones, which is hilarious given how long this movie is and feels. My first con is Loki. I really only like Loki in Thor Ragnarok. Like, yeah, I think Tom Hiddleston is a great actor and I think he's perfect for the role of Loki, but like, I don't like Loki as a person. He doesn't do it for me. I'm not into villain men, especially villain men who like hurt the people that love them because they think that they don't love them. I'm not saying that Thor wasn't complicit to some extent. I'm just saying, in every movie that Thor and Loki have been in, Thor has made it very clear that Loki is his brother.
We were raised together. We played together. We fought together. Do you remember none of that?
Yes, he's made mistakes before, but that is still his brother.
He's adopted.
And he wants a relationship with his brother, and Loki runs away from it every time. For reasons. I'm not saying he doesn't have his reasons.
I remember a shadow. Living in the shade of your greatness.
But he still runs away from it. It just doesn't sit with me, okay? It doesn't fly with me. Some of the writing is kind of pretentious, and again, it's the Whedonisms.
Oh no. You brought the monster.
So, Banner. That's your play.
What?
I get the feeling that Joss Whedon thinks that he is the best screenwriter in the world. There are so many times where the dialogue is just...
He has an army called the Chitauri. They're not of Asgard nor any world known.
ridiculously pretentious, like he thinks he's the smartest person to have ever written a script. And he's not. I just want to make that clear. Okay, we're gonna talk about Steve's old man wardrobe and old man dialogue.
Son, just don't.
Here's the thing. You ready for the thing? You ready? I don't know if you're ready. I'm ready. So Steve is not actually 99 years old. Like, technically, yeah, because he was born at the beginning of the 20th century, and that's fine. That's not what I have a problem with. What I have a problem with is the fact that Joss Whedon really only seems to understand each of the characters as like very specific qualities of their character. Like, Joss Whedon is a comic boy, whereas somebody like Jon Favreau is a comic fanboy, and there's a difference. Joss Whedon writes Steve as an old man, but Steve is not an old man. Steve is like 27 when he goes under and is frozen, and he wakes up the same age. He doesn't actually age mentally or physically. He's not an old man, and even in the first Avenger, like, he doesn't dress like an old man even for the 40s. He dresses like a regular guy in the 40s. But then he talks like an old man, he dresses like an old man, he interacts with the other characters like he is an old man, and I understand to some extent, yeah, he's not gonna understand what they're talking about because he woke up like a month ago or something. However long this is between when he wakes up and when the beginning of the Avengers starts. But Steve is still like 30. Like, you can catch up pretty easily on what the styles and what's in for 25 to 30-year-olds, especially in 2012. We had the internet in 2012. I think because he was Captain America, it would make more sense for somebody at S.H.I.E.L.D. to have attempted to let him blend in or teach him how to blend in with his age group in 2012. Because if he's not wearing the Captain America suit, he's just a regular bimbo. Like, that's fine. Somebody should have been telling him how to blend in, right? At least to an extent where it would be believable for him to fit in and not stand out as an old man trapped in a young body, because that's not what it is. That's not the case. Like, That's not how it is. There are a lot of weird angles in this movie. There are some choices in this where you're like, I think you were trying to do something there, but you didn't really do it that successfully, so like, you didn't have to try that hard. Tony tells Steve,
You're a laboratory experiment, Rogers. Everything special about you came out of a bottle.
it's so hard to tell with the Whedonisms whether or not we're supposed to know that Tony is intentionally misunderstanding Steve and Steve's purpose, or if Tony really thinks that. I know at least part of it is because Tony is jealous that his daddy like was obsessed with finding Steve and Steve's legacy when Tony was a kid, but like, is that it? Or are they trying to convince me that Tony intentionally thinks Steve is nothing? Like, we know that everything special about Steve doesn't come out of the bottle. That is literally the reason that Steve was chosen to be Captain America. Can't tell me otherwise, fight me. This movie feels very long. It really generally isn't that long compared to some other movies, but it feels so long. Some of the scenes are paced so badly that they take forever to get through, and it just makes the whole movie feel that much longer. It's bizarre because I remember when I saw this in theaters, I saw it more than once in theaters and had no problems with the length. I loved every second of it when I was 18. But even after Endgame, which is a 3-hour long movie, this feels like it drags on forever. Is it because it needed to be that long, or is it because Joss Whedon just thinks that he deserves it when he doesn't? Again, I really just don't like Joss Whedon. If you like Joss Whedon, maybe this video's not for you. But also, you should read about the things that Joss Whedon has done. Loki kills Coulson. Always sad. And then the MCU completely ignored Coulson being revived. And Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., anything that happened on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., regardless of the fact that Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. takes into account what happens in the MCU. I guess my last con is just the Chitauri, because
they're not of Asgard nor any world known.
we get a very vague sense of who they are, and I know that they're working for Thanos, but other than to gain Thanos's trust and to gain their own sort of power, I don't really know why they're working with Loki. I don't really know why they're working with Thanos.
Our ally knows its workings as they never will. The world will be his, the universe yours.
And they're also very boring to look at. You know how everybody complained in Suicide Squad that the minions that everybody fights are just these like literal blockheads that are boring and gray, and they have no features, no decipherable features. That's how I feel about the Chitauri. The only thing that sets the Chitauri apart is the whale. You know what I'm talking about? The Chitauri whale thing that takes out half of Manhattan. And then the Avengers have to pay for that for some reason. I guess because there has to be accountability somewhere, but it's hard to hold an intergalactic enemy accountable, I suppose. The Chitauri attack scene also takes forever. And I think part of it is just that they had to show all 6 of the ensemble characters doing their thing. And so to that extent, I can kind of forgive how long the big fight scene is, especially because it is the big fight scene. I get it. But it's still very long. Yeah, that's all I've got. My arbitrary rank was best costume, and mine goes to Thor. I mean, this is one of Thor's better costumes. Sarah said Steve's costume is the best, minus the cowl, it's just a fabric helmet that he can wear as like a cowl over the back of his costume. Everything else about that costume is great. Michaela said Loki's costume. I don't necessarily disagree. I don't like Loki, but I get it. I get it, you know? I honestly don't remember what Brittany or Angel said, although I have a sneaking suspicion one of them said Thor and one of them said Steve. I could be wrong. Okay, so here's where things are getting a little sticky, because when I watched this with Angel and Brittany, I was filming the same night. So I didn't take their individual scores into account. I just wrote down the average score. And I did that with Michaela and Sarah, but then I ran into the problem of adding those numbers up together and how I could do that the best way, and basically I just did whatever I wanted to. So this is about as close as we're gonna get, because I just don't remember what the original scores were, except for mine. But the IMDb score is an 8. The Rotten Tomato score is also an 8 out of 10. My score is a 7 out of 10 because it is just so long. There's so much Joss Whedon about it that I don't like anymore. And yeah, I have fond memories of watching it in the theater, but it's not my favorite Avenger movie. My guest average is a 6.4, which is the closest I'm gonna get to an accurate average. And the total score for Avengers 2012 is 29.4 out of a possible 40. Everybody that I watched this with, no matter which screening it was, had already seen it, because obviously. Up next is a movie called The Iceman. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up for algorithm reasons and click the bell below so you don't miss any of our future videos. If you're not already subscribed to The Princess and the Scrivener, please do so down below as well, especially if you'd like to see more videos on Disney, intersectional feminism, pop culture critiques, Christravaganza, and more. One of us will see you real soon.